A teenage girl opens her front door on a quiet Florida evening, smiling, relaxed, unaware that death is standing just a few feet away. Within seconds, the sound of gunfire tears through the silence, and her mother's screams fill the air. The killer runs, leaving behind nothing but blood and confusion. Police rush to the scene, thinking it's a random act of violence. But the truth is far darker. The man behind the murder wasn't a stranger. It was someone already locked up, someone who once hurt her and wanted her gone before she could testify. This is the shocking, true story of how a Florida man paid his own cousin $6,000 to silence a 17-year-old girl, and how that plan led to his downfall. Isabella Scavelli was just 17, a kind and bright student from a quiet Florida neighborhood. Her life was simple: school, family, and dreams of going to college. But everything changed the day she crossed paths with a man named Lenard White, a 36-year-old she knew through family connections. What began as trust soon turned into horror when White assaulted her in a way that would scar her forever. Terrified but determined, Isabella decided to fight back. She went to the police, told them everything, and her courage turned into a formal case. Investigators gathered evidence, and soon, White was facing serious prison time. Behind bars, however, his anger only grew. He wasn't sorry. He was furious that a teenager had the power to destroy his life. That's when he made a deadly decision. White reached out to his cousin, Sheldon Robinson, a young man struggling for money. Through messages and calls, White offered him a deal, $6,000 in cash to handle a problem. The message was clear: make sure Isabella never made it to court. Robinson agreed, thinking it would be quick and easy. They planned everything carefully. Robinson would wait for the right time, find out where she lived, and make it look like a random attack. White arranged the payment and covered his tracks, believing that even from behind bars, he could control the outcome. What neither man realized was that this plan, born from fear and greed, would eventually expose them both. Isabella had no idea her name was already marked for death, all because she dared to speak the truth. February 7th, 2023. A quiet evening in Florida. The sun was fading, and 17-year-old Isabella Scavelli was at home helping her mother prepare dinner. The street outside was calm, the kind of peaceful silence that hides danger until it's too late. Then came a sudden knock at the door. Isabella walked over, thinking it was a neighbor or a delivery. When she opened it, she didn't even have time to scream. A man in dark clothes raised a gun and fired. The first bullet struck Isabella. Her mother, hearing the shot, ran toward her, only to be hit by another. The killer turned and fled, disappearing into the night. Within minutes, police sirens filled the neighborhood, lights flashing, neighbors screaming. Isabella was pronounced dead on the scene. Her mother survived, bleeding but conscious, and she had seen just enough to help detectives later identify the killer. At first, investigators thought it was a random shooting. There was no forced entry, nothing stolen, and no clear motive. But as detectives dug deeper, they realized this wasn't random at all. Isabella wasn't a random victim. She was the key witness in an upcoming sexual assault trial against Lenard White, a man already sitting in a county jail cell. Detectives began to connect the dots. The timing of the murder, the clean getaway, and the lack of theft all pointed to a hit, a targeted attack designed to silence a witness. What they didn't yet know was how someone already in custody could order a murder on the outside. But soon, the truth would surface. A trail of phone calls, money transfers, and one cousin willing to do the unthinkable for a few $1,000s. Detectives knew something didn't add up. How could a man already in jail be connected to a murder outside? They started digging through Lenard White's prison phone logs, visitor lists, and money transfers, and what they uncovered was a web of secret communication. Every clue pointed toward one person: Sheldon Robinson, White's 21-year-old cousin. Through coded phone calls, White had managed to stay in contact with Robinson. He used phrases like, "handle the situation," and "don't let her talk." Investigators later learned that these weren't random words, they were instructions. White was directing a hit from behind bars. Bank records showed that Robinson received a transfer of nearly $6,000 just weeks before Isabella's death. The money had come from someone connected to White's circle. Police also traced surveillance footage showing Robinson's car near Isabella's neighborhood hours before the shooting. Everything was falling into place. When detectives brought Robinson in for questioning, he tried to act calm, but his story kept changing. First, he claimed he didn't know Isabella. Then, he said he was in another city that day. But when officers showed him the bank records and video evidence, he broke. Robinson finally confessed. He told police that White had promised him money to kill the girl who was ruining his life. He even mentioned another man, Keyshawn Woods, who had driven him to the house. That confession turned the investigation upside down. What started as a tragic murder had now become a murder-for-hire plot, ordered from inside a prison. The motive was as cold as it was clear. Silence the witness, protect the secret, and make sure the truth never saw daylight. But that truth was about to explode into the open. The courtroom was packed when the trial began. Reporters filled every seat, and the air was thick with tension. On one side sat Lenard White, calm and expressionless, dressed in a gray suit. Across from him, Isabella's family held each other tightly, waiting for justice. The prosecutor wasted no time. He described White as a man so desperate to escape punishment that he ordered the death of a teenage girl. The evidence was undeniable. Phone logs, money transfers, text messages, and Sheldon Robinson's full confession painted a horrifying picture. The jury listened as prosecutors explained how White had coordinated the murder while behind bars, paying his cousin $6,000 to kill Isabella before she could testify. The details were cold and calculated. Then came the most emotional moment. Isabella's mother took the stand. Still bearing scars from the shooting, she described the night her daughter was killed, the sound of the gunshots, and the last time she saw her daughter alive. Her words brought the entire courtroom to tears. Even some jurors looked away. Robinson and Keyshawn Woods, who had already confessed, testified against White in exchange for lighter sentences. Their testimonies confirmed what investigators had uncovered. This was a premeditated murder for hire. White didn't flinch once as they spoke. After days of emotional testimony and damning evidence, the jury took only a few hours to decide. When they returned, the judge asked for the verdict. The courtroom fell silent as the words echoed through the room. Guilty on all counts. Lenard White was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The same prison walls he thought would protect him became his final cage, a place where he would spend the rest of his life haunted by what he'd done. Today, Isabella Scavelli's story continues to echo far beyond the small Florida town where she lived and died. Her name has become a symbol of courage, the courage to speak out, even when the odds are terrifying. She didn't live to see justice served, but her bravery made it possible. The man who once tried to silence her ended up silencing himself, trapped forever in the same justice system he tried to manipulate. For investigators, the case was more than another file. It was proof of how determination and teamwork could uncover the truth, even when criminals believed they were untouchable. From tracking financial transfers to decoding phone calls, every step brought them closer to exposing the evil behind the murder. And when the final verdict was read, it wasn't just a victory for Isabella's family. It was a message to every victim who's ever been afraid to speak. In the aftermath, communities across Florida held candlelight vigils in her memory. Her classmates remembered her laughter, her teachers spoke about her kindness, and her story spread online as people demanded stronger protections for young victims. But what makes Isabella's story unforgettable is not only the crime, it's the truth that survived it. Because even though White tried to erase her, the truth refused to die. Her voice became louder than his crime, her name stronger than his silence. In the end, $6,000 bought nothing but a lifetime in prison and a story that America will never forget. Isabella Scavelli's legacy reminds us that evil can destroy lives, but it can never destroy truth, and no amount of money can ever bury justice.